Welcome, everybody. No intros, no nothing, I guess, no countdown. I'm just gonna go ahead and get started. Thank y'all all for being here today. If you're new to the channel, do all the YouTube stuff, subscribe, share, all that stuff's greatly appreciated. Hang on a second, I got the show coming back to me. All right, there we go. All right, so today we're going to be talking about something that is a pretty heavy topic, and I think is long overdue, and it's something I think especially needs to we need to kind of wake up to um, overall, like in the country and all of that good stuff, but really even in our own lives and in our own community. We've kind of I think got a bit lost in the sauce uh, when it comes up to talking about what's really going on with the whole issue around trans people these days. And so this is something I've been wanting to talk about and find different ways to talk about. And in this case, I just got to give all the credit to Suri, I think is the name. I'm not sure how to pronounce the content creator's name. I watch them when their stuff pops up. It's always really good. And, you know, it's one of them situations where a lot of times certain things that you're aware of or you have going on, maybe even talk about it or have a lot of conversations around it. All of a sudden, when you know it gets covered on a bigger channel or starts being discussed in larger spaces, it really helps. It sort of validates, like, okay, yeah, you know, I'm not crazy, and also it just helps move the conversation forward. So um before we jump into it, let me just say quick shout out. Thanks to everybody for being here. Appreciate y'all for checking out the content. Normally on Sunday afternoons, I'm doing Hot Program with my one black friend. He's off today, and you know, typically when one of us takes the day off, we just don't do the show. I didn't want to like break the tradition or like start doing the show without him. So I just decided to do a podcast on my own channel today. This is something I've been wanting to get into for a while. I was actually going to cover it on Thursday, but by the time I got done with what I had to do for the day and went to go live, the transpositions was on, and I didn't feel good about putting this up against the transpositions. With that being said, check out the transpositions. It's like the only trans news show that I know of in the world, hosted by some of our friends, Steph, Bree, Ember, and the lovely Carly Chardonnay Webb. There are also links in the descriptions for Bree and Ember and Steph. And so definitely please subscribe to their channels, and let me know if there are any trans content creators that y'all know of that I should be checking out and promoting. And also just like, you know, I love the fact that we have trans family members that cover so many of the issues. To be honest, that's why I take a back seat and I don't talk about things quite as much as I used to, because quite frankly, I just think we have so many more voices now that people can listen to. But every once in a while, you know, things are important, and we gotta, you know, sort of lift every voice and sing, as they would say. But what I'm getting at is I also think it's important to support people in other endeavors. Like Ember does so much fantastic coverage and news and photography and videography and just amazing content. And you know, Steph is a world-class sailor, and Breeze does all sorts of science content. So if y'all know other trans content creators that are just doing like super cool creative stuff, or just a fun stream or a fun person to know and hang out with, please let me know, and spread the word to others. Obviously, we have a Discord you can use to help you with that as well. All right, so good to see some of y'all in the chat. PC, thanks for showing up. Good to see Maya Adkisson. What up, Song J? Good to see you, bro. All right, so that's that. Let's get the perfunctory cheers, gang. Thanks for coming out. It's going to be a tough topic, but we're going to try to stay encouraged. So anyway, we're talking about basically trying to articulate the argument that there is an active genocide in America with regard to trans people. I don't think it's any surprise that I'm fully on board with that take. You know, I think it's been the state of affairs for quite some time. And I'm just glad to hear other people talking about it. Let's go ahead and jump in. I'll have plenty to say. All right, let's get started.
So I'm just going to get right into it. This is going to be one of the hardest videos that I have ever shot. And it's not because of something massive that's happened to me, though there is technically a bit of a change in perspective that has happened that has colored how I'm going to approach this video. Now, for those of you who have followed my channel for a while, you'll know that I have a video called There Are 10 Steps to Genocide. And in that video, I articulate many of the things that have happened to the trans community in the last few years that can be labeled as steps towards genocide. I want to go ahead and make the case today, as much as it is not going to be easy to. I want to make the case today that I think we've actually gone through every single step. And I want to start that off by asking you, if you were an organization that learned from history, that learned that the world, on the whole, responded to the idea of genocide by sending militaries into a country and taking it down, what lesson would you take from that? There are a couple lessons you can take from it. One is that people on the whole do not like it when a country is involved in a mass killing, and therefore you probably shouldn't do those things, based solely on the understanding that most of us are not really big fans of those things.
All right, so this is actually tough, I think, for a lot of us. One, having to stare this reality in the face is it's actually difficult. You know, this is something that I think we struggle to talk about across issues. So, for instance, hopefully, apparently to you, a Black person. Hopefully that's clear. And I know how difficult it is for me as a Black person to talk about race. But I also recognize that there's a certain degree of I've just had to deal with it my whole life, and so you just learn to deal with it. And for a lot of people who don't have to deal with it, who have never had to deal with it, when we start to get into how it really manifests and what the impact really is to the lived experience of the people in the communities, it's so ugly and so messed up that it actually causes people, from my perspective, to lose their goddamn minds. because it's just so uncomfortable for them to even have to have the conversation. And it gets incredibly frustrating because it's like, I have to live with this shit. We have to live with racism. We have to live with bigotry. We have to live with discrimination from minor petty slights, insults, and slurs, all the way through, you know, systematic and institutionalized discrimination and oppression, all the way through to threats on our actual lives in physical harm to our persons and potentially lethal force being used against us. Yet it is a different kind of trauma to even have to become aware that this is what people have to deal with. And for some reason, like, part of this person sharing that their perspective on things has changed and they feel like, okay, I got to take this next step to acknowledge what's going on. I actually feel like, to me, is a call to all of us to constantly be reevaluating and willing to change our perspective and our approach to things in real time. And part of it for me, that is, I'm just going to admit, difficult, is having to have empathy and understanding that being made aware of another person's trauma and oppression can itself be a source of trauma, quite frankly. And it gets to be, hang on, it gets to be real. Sorry, I hit that accidentally. It gets to be frustrating, like I said, because you feel like people have to deal with something, and then the other people who we need to get like on board, they're freaking out just because we're even having the conversation. And I just want to say, like, I get that, but we've all got to be willing to be uncomfortable, I guess, in this moment. And I'm just trying to encourage people to, like, take this sincerely. That this is not, nobody's trying to be hyperbolic here. This isn't about you know, shaming or guilting people. Maybe that's going to be part of this process at certain points, but let's like eye on the prize. Like, this is not a joke. Like we really got to talk about what's happening. And I hope that no matter how you come down on this issue, that you're willing to think in real time about what might need to happen differently.
There's another lesson that could be learned there. And it's the lesson that if you're going to engage in a genocide, you need to make it as invisible as humanly possible. Now, again, I know I've probably lost a lot of people. If you're watching on YouTube, either some of you have hopped off because there's a cartoon avatar with a bunch of Vulpixes behind him and a chat box there, so obviously this can't be a well-prepared video because it's a live stream by an amateur. For those of you who are still here despite all that, thank you very much. And for those of you who are here despite readily typing away in the comments how there is no genocide happening in the United States, you would know if there is one. I'd like to point out that most of the regular citizens in Germany wouldn't have called what they were doing genocide until everything had already gone down. So let's go ahead and make sure that it's abundantly clear. Nobody who is actively involved in the, you know, in the act of a genocide is going to actively say that they are.
Okay, yeah. So there's a bunch here. So the first thing is, yeah, I mean, ostensibly, we're supposed to all be on board with the idea that genocide is bad. And I would argue that it's become a bit of a, for lack of a better expression, I'm going to say moral truism, like a thing you're just supposed to say, and we're all agree that we all agree. In reality, I don't think we all agree. And I think if we're honest, there's a certain political and social agenda that is driving this. And while it's not exclusively a movement of, say, conservatism in the traditional, American political sense, it is largely driven by a conservative agenda. Now, part of this conversation for me is going to be about how, quite frankly, we're playing into this game. We're playing into their hands across the spectrum. But it's clear that the real driving force behind a lot of this is a certain perspective. And it is a largely conservative one, and it largely features a lot of religious motivation. I'm just going to put it that way. And when it gets right down to it, I think we go too far to give them credit for being on board with the sort of quote unquote baby 101 moral truisms of our society. And if you want to know where I'm going with that, let's be clear. We have a lot of conversations in this community with apologists and people on the other side, and we try to have these conversations all the time. And there's certain things that come up and we never really get the straight moral answers we're looking for. When we really start talking about, first of all, there's certain things that are always coming up with these people, right? They always want to have a conversation with us about morality, and they want to talk about moral arguments. And for some reason, rape, slavery, the Holocaust, murder, these are things that routinely come up in these conversations. Routinely. And number one, we routinely get the sort of God, what's the term I'm looking for? Oh my goodness. If there's nothing wrong with God, if there's no God, then what's wrong with rape? If there is no God, then what's really wrong with slavery? If there's no God, then what's wrong? Christian nihilism, that's the word I'm looking for, the nihilism. If I'm not right, if my moral system isn't really the one that's in authority, then what is actually wrong with any of these things? For most of us, it's like, I don't even know how to have, right? But that's where we're at. So let's be honest about that. That we're dealing with people who literally believe that morality comes from their particular authoritative religious narrative, and outside of their religious narrative, they've at least signed a death pact in many cases that they are ride or die with. That's their stance. And then when you try to have the actual conversations, well, let's just get on the nose then. Is slavery wrong? Is it wrong to own other people? Is SA always wrong? Is genocide always, is it right? What do we get? We get the him and the hawing. We get the and then it's right back to, well, if there's no God, what's wrong with it anyway? So why am I saying this? I don't know that we can take it for granted that we all do agree that genocide is bad. It seems we don't agree to that. And when you look at the fact that we're dealing with genocides around the world, quite frankly, a lot of times they seem to be motivated by ethnic conflict with, you know, opposing extreme religious factions on each side. It seems like we don't actually really want to call genocides. And we don't all agree that they're wrong. Because some of us go, there's a genocide against Gazans. They're bombing schools, they're blowing up hospitals. Most people that are dying are not combatants, and they're civilians, and the people have been displaced and they're being starved. And people won't call that a genocide. And they won't call it out, and they won't say it's wrong. Matter of fact, they'll say the opposite. They'll say we stand with Israel. Israel has a right to defend itself. So it's kind of like, I'll believe you think genocide is bad when you show me you think genocide is bad. But I'm honestly not comfortable just acting like that's something we can all agree to. I think we can all agree that to be accused of that is very unexpedient and not good for your reputation. So it seems very clear that people try to avoid having their behavior labeled that way. But do they really have a problem with it? And right now, I don't feel, when it comes to the trans issue, that there are enough believers in the humanity and inherent worth and value of trans people to consider them whole and human enough to even make an objective evaluation of whether or not there's a genocide against them or not. And I think if you do humanize them enough, then it's quite obvious that there is. So then the question becomes is why is this really happening? And unfortunately for me, a lot of it comes down to a particular flavor of bigotry that we are not really truly ready to confront.
But that said, let me go ahead and show you all where my argument is coming from primarily. So these are the stages of genocide. These are effectively irrefutable. These are the things that you...
Yeah, Michael Beverly said, Christians cannot say genocide is always wrong unless they admit their God does evil, so they're stuck. And I would say this is the case of a lot of religious traditions, especially the Abrahamic ones, where you know, the basis of your story is a God who was like, hey, you know, this is mine, these are my people, go take that land, wipe all those people out because this is what I have for you. Yeah, it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough. And that is largely what I think is happening with the trans issue. I think it's the same thing. It's, they don't see it, they don't want to see it as genocide because they want to see it as divine command. The trans people are not valid according to their interpretation of scripture and their faith. And so they're not fully human. They're not worthy of the same consideration because they're living outside of God's vision and God's role and the way God wants things to be. And this is, you know, for me, largely the theme of this, and largely why I feel like, in some sense, I'm making this really probably a futile effort, but really just to reach to a lot of conservative Christians across the aisle and say, this is y'all. This is y'all. Your moral panic about LGBTQ and anti-woke and anti-DEI and all of this shit, and your creationism and all of it. This is where it has led us to. And I would argue there is a genocide against trans people, and it is being led largely by Christians and other conservative influence. And then the rest of us going along with it. Because for a lot of people, they've bought into the idea. It's like I feel about the issue of homosexuality. Largely, homosexuals have been oppressed for time immemorial because it has been against the indoctrination of far right religious extremists, always. But then you have all these other people that want to come along and they want to do the apologetics for it, and they want to say, no, it's not really that way. It's not really inherently biased. It's really not that bigoted. But notice they're always trying to convince us, trying to convince you that they're not really a homophobe for being a Christian. Okay, fine. Now take that and go convince the rest of the Christians. Don't waste your time with me. You know I'm down with the LGBTQ. That's my homies. You know where I stand. Oh, okay, cool. You're not one of the bad ones. Cool. You love LGBTQ. Awesome. Jesus loves everybody, no matter who they are. Awesome. I love that. That's awesome. Don't waste another fucking moment with me. You've already got me on your side. Go convince your church mates. Yeah, next time the preacher goes off and says some crazy shit about the attack against family values, they stand up and say, what the fuck is this shit? Stand up and say, no. Jesus loves everybody just the way they are. He doesn't hate gay people. But you won't say it. Hang on. My background fucking thing's going on. Go back. Mute that. All right, sorry about that. So crazy talk to me. But they don't do that, yo. They don't do that. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to hate. I'm just trying to be honest with you. I don't see that effort. I spent decades in churches, all different denominations, all different flavors. You never saw those type of conversations happening. Why? Because at the end of the day, they already know they can't convince them of that. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, it's like when they come tell us that stuff, that's them coping. They are at tension with what they know is the bigotry and the bias that resides deep in the heart of those people and deep in the core of their faith, and they know it. But they still want to be part of the group because they still got to feel special. They still got to feel like they're one of God's perfect children. They still got to feel like they're entitled to their salvation. And they're entitled to be correct in their interpretation of their God. So they need you to understand that they're one of the good ones. And they really think this is all unfortunate and it's a big misunderstanding. But you know good and goddamn well it isn't a misunderstanding. And if you really pushed them to it, if you really said to them, be for real with me. Are you real serious about this Christian stuff? Yeah, are you real serious about this Jesus stuff? Yeah. God really gives you hope, meaning, and purpose. Yeah. That's really you derive your sense of morality and what's right and wrong. Yeah. Okay, well, do you think being homosexual is a sin? Answer the question. Because a lot of them will get to the hemming and the hawing and the da-da-da-da-da, and at the end of the day, they're going to tell you that's what is in the book, and it does say that, but your sin is no different than my lust or my desire to covet my neighbor's goods. Or at the end of the day, they're going to reveal that, yeah, they do give credence in moral things to their God, and they understand what their God wants through their God's holy word, and it does say that in God's word. Now, God works in mysterious ways, so it's not on them to figure it out. What is my point, gang? My point is, how can they help you when in reality they don't agree? They don't share the values. The reason they have a hard time convincing the other people to change is because they're actually believe the same thing. And so it's very difficult for somebody to advocate for you when in reality, they hold the same views as the people that are trying to oppress you. They just don't want to be candid about it. And I feel a lot of the same thing is happening with trans people. I hear a lot of quote unquote liberal people talking about, well, he made them male and female. Or I just don't understand. I just don't understand trans. Da, 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 da. Well, I'm just worried about all of this nonsense. So if you think those people are wrong, when is that going to become your priority? In other words, why are you so busy trying to convince people on the left and people who are accepting of trans people that you're down with them instead of being part of the in-group of the people that is oppressing them and leveraging your status as part of that in-group to convince the people in your group that they're wrong? And why do you seem so unwilling to do that?
Look for when determining if a genocide is happening. And the reason I say these are effectively irrefutable is these are based entirely on experts who have studied acts of genocide everywhere. A couple things to get out of the way real quick. A genocide does not have to be successful to be a genocide. Jewish people still exist, but a genocide still happened during the Holocaust, as an example. Also, a genocide does not need to be at the stage of extermination to be a genocide, but hopefully I can at least convince some of you all that we are at the red flag area of stage 9, at least to a degree. Again, I will get to there, I promise. But first of all, let's go ahead and read through what each of these stages say so that we can figure out kind of why I am coming to where I am.
All right, y'all. So let's get a little bit of organization of this. Again, this video is awesome. Let me drop a link real quick in the chat. You can click on the name in the description. It'll take you to the channel, but there's the video as well. We are going to kind of go through these, and let's try to keep track of the stages that we're going through. Like I said, crazy that we're having this conversation, but for those that can't see, we've got the 10 stages of genocide up on a slide, and I think we're going to go through, I believe, at least the first 9 of these. So yeah, we'll go ahead and jump in. So the first one is classification.
Stage 1 is the classification of a people. This is where differences between people are not respected. There is a division of us versus them, which can be carried out using stereotypes or excluding people who are perceived to be different. Now, this is a hard one for most people to grapple around because it feels like such a low bar. But remember, this is stage 1, and it is not necessary for any of these stages to necessarily scale into the next ones. But I think, well, let me just show you where my argument is coming from for this one. So this is HB 3817 in Texas. This is a House bill that has a very, very simple goal. And, well, despite it being a very simple goal, if you read it, you'll see what the end effect is supposed to be. A bill to be entitled, an act relating to the creating of the criminal offense of gender identity fraud, be it enacted by the legislature of the state of Texas, Section 1, Subchapter D, Chapter 32, Penal Code, is amended by adding Section 3.515 to read as follows. Gender identity fraud. A person commits an offense if the person knowingly makes a false or misleading verbal or written statement to a governmental entity or the person's employer by identifying the person's biological sex as the opposite of the biological sex of the person at birth. Now, bear in mind that the Trump administration has argued that biological sex and gender are to mean the same thing, and anything that refers to one should refer to the other.
Yeah, and of course, this is a huge problem, right? Because, like so many other issues where religious fundamentalism is just insufferable and ruins everything. They just can't help but now being so desperate to pass everything off that they do as having scientific validity to it. And so rather than explicitly just saying that, hey, we're Christ the fascist and God created the male and female and da 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 da, now it's the biological reality, right? So now it's actually science that is being weaponized, or pseudoscience, I should say, being weaponized. And this is just it's creationism run amok. I mean, it's really very difficult to sit here as an evolutionary biologist, gang, and not see the just you know, and again, I don't like to make things about, you know, some kind of academic controversy, but I can't overlook it here. And you know, it's the same thing with Dawkins and Jerry Coyne, right? And now all these usually emeritus professors who are now coming out and saying, oh my goodness, sex is the one binary we have and it's so essential to our nature. And it's just fucking bullshit. But more importantly, y'all, this is where we're at. And I need all of the Christian Jesus fan club to get on board with this. What are we talking about, y'all? We're now passing laws where you go to jail for committing gender fraud because we messed up your birth certificate. When it gets to this point, y'all, I don't care anymore. I don't care. Like this is who y'all are. If you're a Christian in this country, I need you to understand this is the type of shit that y'all keep having us deal with. And where you at? Where are you? Where is the love of the least of these and taking care of the most marginalized? Where are y'all at? Y'all are trying to pass laws to put transgender people in prison. So what the? You're gonna knock on my door and tell me about the love of God? You're gonna tell me I should come to your church on Sunday so I could learn how to be in community? So I can see all the wonderful things Jesus is gonna do for me? How can you say these things with a straight face?
Before you go typing away in the comment sections there. Part B of this says, an offense under this section is a state jail felony, and the act takes effect September 1st, 2025.
A felony.
A state jail felony for being trans. We're not going to talk about neopronouns or people who are gender fluid or any of the other complicated esoteric bits that we could possibly talk about here. We're just talking about a trans person, a person who has at some point in their life decided that the thing the doctor said they were is not the thing that they are. They have made that decision as an adult, or they made that decision as a minor and did not act upon that decision until being an adult, or any number of ways that you can argue this. Most of the trans people I know began their therapies and everything well into adulthood.
And again, y'all, where's their outrage? Where's the protest about January 6th rioters being pardoned? Motherfuckers, people stormed our Capitol, sent the legislatures into hiding under protection from the Secret Service, shit all over George Washington's portrait in the whole fucking 9 yards, and assaulted police officers. They all get released. Mum's the word. Mum's the word. Matter of fact, you probably picked up the latest J6 Choir remix. Y'all getting ready for their, I guess they holiday Christmas album be out anytime now. But now y'all got the energy to throw trans people in prison for identifying as a gender other than the one they were assigned at birth. Which, last time I checked, we don't even assign genders at birth. So what the fuck are we even talking about? This is hatred, y'all. And if you're not seeing the way religion and faith was used to set all this up, I don't know what to tell you. You are just willfully ignorant. And before anybody starts to accuse us, we're not trying to be anti-Christian. We're actually asking, where the fuck are the real Christians? Because I don't see any pushback to these people. I don't see it.
About adults, anybody who tries to argue that this is about children is wrong, because there is no part about this bill that cares about children. To argue that this is not stage one, at the very least, a classification, and us versus them, a way to force people to choose a category, and choosing the wrong category causes them to get sent to a jail cell, you would be blatantly incorrect. I would also like to argue that there is a trend with Georgia, Alabama, Florida, Texas, and Tennessee, and Virginia, that when one of these laws successfully passes in the House or Senate of any of those states, copycat laws are enacted in each of our states directly afterwards. So any argument that this is only happening in Texas, I don't want to hear it, because history shows that that doesn't fucking matter. Now, the next stage is symbolization. This is a visual manifestation of hatred. Jews in Nazi-occupied Europe were forced to wear the Yellow Star of David in Cambodia.
All right, hang on. So let's just wrap up. Let's just wrap up this classification thing. I just don't think there's any argument. You know, we have done everything possible to other and alienate trans people. Everything. And literally now everyone really, but particularly women, have to worry about being transvestigated 24/7. And we saw this, right? We saw this with the Olympics, where we had complete outrage over a transgender boxer beating up on a cis girl. Oh, oops, our bad. Turns out she wasn't trans. Yikes. Oh, sorry about that. No, you're not. Because it's happened since, and it happened before that. It's always been this way. But this is the world that we now have to live in. Are her shoulders too broad? Is her jawline too strong? Is she too strong? We're supposed to do women's sports to celebrate the strength of women, but no, don't be too strong now. This is a nightmare.
The Khmer Rouge were forced from the Eastern Zone to wear blue scarves. From 1992 in northwest Bosnia, all non-Serbian citizens were forced to wear armbands. Now, let me make this argument very clear. The transgender flag's existence is not an act of authoritarian symbolization. It's not. But the fact that it exists means it can be used that way. While we have not had forced symbolization in a way that I fully can articulate right now, we do 100% have a symbol that can be used very quickly, and it's ready right there, and there are plenty of trans people who will wear this with pride, much like there are plenty of Jewish people who already would be perfectly fine wearing a Star of David. And then the minute that this gets used against them, as we go further down the stages of genocide, is where things get a lot more icky.
And it's, you know what, it's profound the way this stuff works, because let's remember in all of this that it's more than just identifying the stages of genocide so that we can make the appropriate diagnostic call here. It's about understanding these stages and how they work mechanistically to in effect create or support genocides, right? That's what's important. And then a big part of that is again, you need it to be hidden, you need it to be quiet, you need it to be invisible, and you also need to manufacture consent, right, from everyone else. And that's the phase we're in right now, which is, it's not that the genocide's not happening, it's that we're all still so bought into the bullshit that led to it, we're still willing to go along with it. And so part of the way this symbolization stuff works is, you see in our culture, in our society, where everything has been so quote unquote politicized, which is really the right wingers saying, hey, oh my God, everything is so divisive. Don't be so divisive. You're making me feel guilty. Right. And then what happens is, it's not just a matter of trans people themselves, being identified or forced to wear an armband, but it's the fact that anything that they use to, celebrate their own community, their own culture, their own identity, to something that could be inclusive to others, like, hey, let's have a super trans friendly, coffee night at this bar so that, you know, the community knows, like, hey, you're loved, you're supported, like, come make some friends, come hang out, like, let's have a good time. Well, now if you're that bar, now you got to get ready to deal with being protested by the church down the street because you're so woke, right? And then now your patrons coming to you, hey man, well, we spend a lot of good money here on Thursday nights for our bowling league, but if you're going to be getting super political and you're going to be all trans about it, like, and you're just going to be throwing this wokeness in our face, you know, we didn't come here for wokeness. Go woke, go broke, right? So now they're gonna, and then they start to say, well, if we're gonna lose the bowling league, and then people aren't gonna want to come here for trivia night, and then what if they start showing up for do we really want to continue to have an LGBTQ forward inclusive event if it's gonna cost us the rest of our business? Right, and then it's Pride Month, and then the straight cis folks are like, yeah, it's Pride Month, but I better not wear my Pride shirt to work because I don't, you know, because then I'll get dragged in my boss's office, and everybody will be saying I'm being so political and I'm being too woke, right? And so now it's like, not only are we literally trying to eradicate trans people, but we can use this sort of symbolic aspect to it to manufacture consent, and then to get people to not even stand with them. Because to even stand with them, to even show solidarity with them, allows us to symbolically target you just the same. And so that's where you end up. You don't even realize it, but just even being a person who says, like, trans people are cool, let's make them feel welcome, let's not murder them. Congratulations, you're about to get subjected to like a minor form, but still the same trans bigotry. Like the bigotry against trans people applies just as strongly to all of their advocates, allies, families, friends, doctors, anybody else, anybody who's willing to go to bat for these people. And that's how we manufacture your consent. Oh, yeah, your doctor was supporting you. Yeah, well, guess what? New laws are going to say your doctor can't do that. And so now a doctor who just says, yeah, I'll keep giving you hormones, or yeah, we're going through the steps, and we're gonna see what the best treatment outcome for you is. Well, click clack, he's about to get the gun held to his head. Hey, buddy, would you like to practice medicine for all of these people you practice medicine for, or are you willing to risk your job over continuing to provide gender inclusive, you know, care for the few people? You know, you're a teacher. You sure you want to go to war with the school board over you being able to, you know, refer to your students how they want to be referred to in the classroom, and not say anything to their parents so that they don't get abused when they get home? You sure? Because that could be a risky call. It could be a risky call. You sure you want to fight the school district on including that trans girl on the 6th grade soccer team? Y'all, they coming for all of us with this shit. Please don't get it twisted. Please don't get it twisted.
Your third stage is discrimination. This is where a dominant group denies civil rights or even citizenship to identified groups. The 1935 Nuremberg laws stripped Jews of their German citizenship and made it illegal for them to do many jobs or to marry German non-Jews. Now, all that is required here is for civil rights to be denied for a minority group. There are, in 2025, 687 anti-trans bills active.
Pause the fucking tape, gang. Y'all know this shit is off because you know the fucking number goes up every day. But even just this little, you know, slice in time from 4 days ago, or whatever this came out 4 days ago, you know, 687 bills in 49 States. That's everywhere, y'all. What are we doing? What are we doing? This is crazy. This is, and again, this is how you make the genocide quiet. We're just following the law. This is insane, y'all.
687 anti-trans bills active
and they came
in
for me.
Every
there you go, PC.
single state. 17 of which in this year alone have passed. Any argument that we are not in stage 3 is 100% incorrect, evidenced entirely by the fact that we have already been doing this. We have already been trying to remove civil rights from trans people.
And again, you can't play sports. You have to be worried that you're going to be harassed anytime you're in public and decide to use a public restroom. You are now moving increasingly towards you can't travel because you're not going to be able to travel, with your preferred presentation and name and identity because all of that's now going to have to be in line with what you were assigned at birth. So now your documentation is all fucked up. It's going to be tough for you. It's tough to get employment because let's be faced. This is all an economic war. We want to make it so it's hard for you to travel, hard for you to go to school, hard for you to get a job, hard for you to find friends, hard for you to fall in love. Hard. How is this not discrimination? I just don't. And again, like. It's not a debate. It's not a debate we're finna have. I'm not gonna debate you about it. We're not gonna debate. We're not gonna talk about it. We're not gonna have a conversation. I'm not a fucking idiot. This is fucking bigotry. You need to stop. You need to stop. You just need to stop, y'all. This is crazy. And again, like I said, we just boycott the motherfuckers. Y'all want to? I'm just not even listening until I see religious people. Y'all, you keep telling me I'm supposed to give my life to God, and then I'm supposed to become morally superior. I'm supposed to become better. When I see y'all doing better, that's when we could then have a conversation. When y'all turn this thing around and we are just going, oh my goodness, would you just look how loving these people are? They don't discriminate against anybody. They stop the culture war. Man, what a bunch of impressive people. Then we can have a conversation. Until then, you need to just stop.
Ability to gain your passports with your chosen name, your chosen gender, has been revoked from trans people. The ability to vote has been argued to be revoked from anybody whose name does not coincide with the name on their birth certificate, which just
and let's just be clear, the Dems have the same problem. I hate to tell people this, but when it comes to Trumpists and Dems, they're in the same cult. No, I'm not talking about Trumpism. I'm talking about the cult. They're in the actual same cult. They believe the same things. They have the same core values. They send their kids to the same schools and they worship in the same churches on Sunday. That's why the Dems are limp dick. A huge part of the problem in this country is right-wingers are complicit in a genocide in Gaza. Why? Because they're paid for and funded by conservative pro-Israel interests. Who pays for the Democrats? Oh, the same fucking conservative pro-Israel interests. And then we just had a big election. It was time for the Democrats to stand for something. Make people aware these things were happening. Nah, y'all were so limp. Y'all didn't even mention this shit. Didn't even mention trans. Didn't even mention genocide against Palestinians, Ukrainians, in Africa, in the Sudan, in nowhere. Nowhere. Never had the courage. And then after not even having the audacity to mention it, nevertheless took a stand for it. Then when you lost, had the fucking nerve to pretend you did too much. Well, we did too much talking about trans people, and we did too much talking about institutional racism, and we did too much talking about police reform, and we just went way too far with the DEI. We went way too far with inclusion, way too far with diversity. What? Motherfuckers didn't talk about racism, sexism, bigotry, class war, none of that shit. None of it. And then had the audacity to say you went too far.
Something that a lot of trans people fall into the category of. And of course, telling a trans person that they are not allowed to say what their gender is 110% an anti-trans law. It is discrimination in every way, shape, and form. The next stage is dehumanization. Those who are perceived as different are treated with no form of human rights or personal dignity. It specifies that during the genocide in Rwanda, Tutsis were referred to as cockroaches, and the Nazis referred to Jews as vermin. So, how do you get dehumanization of trans people in the United States? Well, we can define dehumanization as the process of depriving a person or a group of their positive human qualities. So what would be more dehumanizing than being told that one of the most basic things you would like to participate in, a sport, needs to be revoked from you because you are less than?
Now, pause the tape, and this is where some of y'all have what I'm going to lovingly call an empathy gap. And I don't want to hear a goddamn thing about whether or not you're a sports fan or you care about sports. What the fuck is wrong with y'all? If you are outside of America, you get you don't even, I'm not even giving you a pass. I'm gonna just say I don't live in your country. I don't live in your culture, so I can't speak to exactly what it's like. But I have a pretty clear impression that it's the same, which is that in every fucking society there is sport of some form, and sport is incredibly important for participation. And everyone participates. It is, to be cliche, as American as apple pie. And this idea that we could somehow tell a group of people they can't play sports, or they can't play sports as who they are, and then act like we haven't taken a fundamental right from them. It's bullshit, and you know it. Because let somebody, and here's when it's going to happen. It'll happen at your own hand. It'll happen just like y'all was down with Trump, and now you're getting the results of being down with Trump. You're an FA, and now you're FO. Okay, it'll be the same thing. Because when the bill gets passed, and we start doing all the gender testing, and like I said, you got you a big strong girl. You got you a big strong girl. Came out the womb looking brolic, ready to do some damage on the pitch. discovered that soccer and they just loved it. They got the footwork, they got the balance. Maybe they do a little dancing on the side because they're kind of a ballerina too. So then they translated, they got the strength, but they also got that footwork and that skill. Oh no, don't let the test come back. The test say you 2 nanomoles per millimole over the threshold. Oh no. No, but you don't understand. She's not trans. She's not trans. She's just a big, strong girl. What's the first thing them parents are going to be talking about? You are taking away my child's fundamental right. Oh, it's a fundamental right now. I thought it was just a game. I thought sports didn't matter. No. As soon as your child can't participate, it's going to be on. We supposed to be having another civil war and all of that. You know good and goddamn well playing sports is considered a fundamental right. And if you don't believe me, ask the International Olympic Committee. I'm pretty sure they know a thing or two about sports. And so what is wrong with people to even allow that door to be opened? You are basically saying to people, if you present the argument to me ever so carefully, I will set other people's humanity aside. So sports is the test. If they can get you to think there might be a legitimate reason to discriminate in the instance of sport, now I see the key. You're not really anti-discrimination. You just need justification. I got plenty of justification for you. What do you think is next? Well, why should they be able to have certain jobs? Certain jobs, we got it's certain things, and it's not going to be fair if you start letting them. Come on, y'all. Wake up.
The cis girls in those sports. California schools and families hurt by transgender athlete controversy denounce Newsom for enabling this crisis in the first place. Tucker Carlson saying that transgenderism is the most dangerous extremist movement in the United States. CPAC speaker calling for the eradication of transgenderism. This, of course, was Michael Knowles calling for the elimination of transgenderism. Any argument whatsoever that none of this points to an attempt at dehumanizing trans people would, in the same breath, never want any of this to happen to their child. It would be considered dehumanizing of Christians to say that we need to eliminate all Christians from the United States. They would be seen as vermin. They would be seen as lambs to a slaughter.
Damn, PCA's updated number 762 bills. Just a goddamn shame.
It's in fact part of the language that Christians have used for years to describe themselves in the first place. So why, when the shoe is on a different foot, does it feel like it fits any different? It shouldn't. And that leaves us to stage 5, organization. Now, it says here genocides are always planned. Regimes of hatred often train those who go to carry out the destruction of a people. Now, there are a couple things that I want to bring up here. The first one is how often drag shows, trans people, etc., are labeled as pedophiles in the media, while at the same time, groups labeling them as pedophiles sell merchandise saying kill your local pedo. Now, while we don't have any link to being transgender and being a pedophile in any scientific data whatsoever, that never matters.
Okay, and then there's something else we got to throw in here. First off, let's just call the bigotry and hatred for what it is. For it to even be implied that your existence is a threat to children. I mean, I'm sorry, y'all. I'm just too black for this shit. I'm just too black for this shit. I don't know what else to say, but I am too black for this shit. I know what hatred looks like. I know what the shit sounds like. I'm not dumb. I don't I don't know. I don't know how I don't know how people think they could just get over on other people. I guess people just don't know what hatred looks like, but to literally just be told that I have to worry about you because just you existing could somehow corrupt my child, like that's just tell me to throw myself off a bridge. Just tell me how you really feel. That's just straight up hatred. Okay. But now to this hypocrisy. And I forget who said it. I wish I remember who said it. But basically what they said were all of these people freaking out about LGBTQ people, quote unquote, grooming and indoctrinating your children and hypersexualizing them, da 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 da, are the same people to ask a 5-year-old, do they have a girlfriend? So get the fuck up out of here. Get the fuck up out of here, because the same fucking people are literally the ones arranging little play dates and little fake fucking marriages and, you know, little kid wedding. Oh, let's have them dressed up and do. It's incredible. It's incredible. And then have the audacity to be mad about other people. And you start talking to your kids about the proper way to be a man and the proper way to be a woman, like right out of the goddamn womb. So again, like what are we supposed to say? What are we supposed to say? I'm like, I just think that needs to straight up be the question, y'all. As soon as somebody tell you something about children, just ask them flat out. Have you ever asked an 8-year-old whether or not they have a girlfriend? Oh, you did? Then shut the fuck up.
And that leaves us to stage 5, organization. Now, it says here genocides are always planned. Regimes of hatred often train those who go to carry out the destruction
Sorry, I hit
of
the
a
button.
people.
I had to find where we were.
Now, there are a couple things that I want to bring up here. The first one is how often drag shows, trans people, etc., are labeled as pedophiles in the media, while at the same time, groups labeling them as pedophiles sell merchandise saying kill your local pedo. Now, while we don't have any link to being transgender and being a pedophile in any scientific data whatsoever, that never matters. It never matters. Not ever once. That was the argument that I used when I made my original video on this, and I still want to stick by that argument. But I think I have one other argument for the organization against trans people. Once again, you do not enact 687 bills in 49 states unless there is a well-organized and concerted effort against a group of people. There is no such thing as an unorganized movement that has proposed this much legislation. And any argument to the contrary is in full denial of reality. Because I can show you the reality sourced directly in front of you.
Yeah, and to anybody that paid any this is who they are. And I don't believe anybody that says they don't know because they promised to do this. They spent millions upon millions upon millions. They ran anti-trans ads at the fucking Super Bowl. This is who they have been the whole time. They got up at CPAC and said, we're going to erase transgender ideology. And then, like they said, Tucker Carlson, all of them celebrated and made a big hoot and holler about it on Fox News. What? Now they don't watch Fox News? You told me before, I got to understand the bubble they live in because all they watch is Fox News. They see the hatred presented from them, fed to them, shoved down their throat on Fox News. Now, what you tell me? They don't know what's happening? They didn't know this was going on? They didn't know. They didn't really get the fuck out of here. So to me, this is what they wanted. And people knew this is what they wanted, and that was okay. Because it wasn't about them. It wasn't going to affect them. So that was okay. So you know. You knew. And to be honest with you, most of y'all just dogpiled. I do not hear Christians speaking up on behalf of LGBTQ people in a systematic way. I'm not talking about on an individual basis. That's all well and good. But we got to fight the power, y'all. I don't have no fucking power. The mods in my chat ain't got no fucking power. My friends in the community, we ain't got no fucking power. So stop trying to convince us and go convince the people with the power. And for some reason, y'all won't even try. It's almost like you know that's who they are. It's almost like you know that this is exactly who they are, and this is exactly what they want. And really, it's been about you needing to straddle the fence. You needing to feel like you're one of us, and you're fighting the good fight, and you care about the little guy, but needing to maintain your proximity to power. I don't know what to tell you. But we are getting what y'all signed up for. And while I don't hear people standing up to them, what I do hear is the trans panic. I do hear people that are supposed to be providing liberalizing, freeing messages of the love of God, talking about how gender ideology is a threat to our humanity. I do hear a lot about that. I do hear a lot about how we've gone too far with identity politics, and we've gone too far talking about racism and DEI and all this other stuff. I hear a lot of anti-wokeness. Again, these people hate liberals more than they hate fascists. I'll say it again. These people hate liberals more than they hate fascists. Now, you think these are the type of people you can cooperate with and they gonna get on board, and they're going to be the people that actually, you know, take their fucking boots off the neck of marginalized people. I don't know what planet you're living on. Because I'm just going to remind you, they hate liberals more than they hate fascists. I ain't no fan of liberals all the goddamn time, but I damn sure know they're on the right side of history.
Now, stage 6 is polarization. This is where groups begin making propaganda. The propaganda can come in a variety of forms. It can be even have a ton of levity. Hell, look at a lot of anti-Jewish propaganda in early Germany during the Weimar Republic. A lot of the anti-Jewish propaganda from then doesn't look like it's calling for genocide. It just has to exist. It just has to exist. So I wonder if we can find any major funded groups from the United States that have been creating anti-trans propaganda. Well, I don't know what else you would consider the What is a Woman movie from Matt Walsh. I don't know what else you would consider Lady Ballers from the Daily Wire. And in fact, I think you'll find that I'm not the only one calling these films propaganda. and anti-trans propaganda at that.
But again, like
All that
the
is
right wing has made these people darlings. Literally, flexing your conservative Christo-fascist credentials is the path to power. Y'all did this to us. Like it's just that's just where we're at. That's where we're at. Is that y'all have a lot of power and influence. Let's just go ahead and concede that. You have a lot of power and influence. A lot. Y'all have organizational power, you have economic power, you have social power, you have political power. And so they came to y'all needing to get your buy-in. They needed you. There's no way these people could get away with a genocide against clearly one of, if not arguably, the most marginalized group in our society right now, especially if we're going to do some sort of ratio of like degree of marginalization, like per like unit of individual. It's a real fucked up calculus. I'm a scientist. Sometimes we try to quantify the worst shit, but that's just how our brains work, right? Like there's a certain amount of energy that gets put into marginalizing minority groups, right? But at least for a lot of groups, they're large groups. Black people are fucking everywhere. Like, so there's a lot of effort in the put into like keeping Black people under wraps, but there are a lot of us, you know, so it gets spread out. Like there's so much effort being put into ruining trans people's lives, and they're just like, aren't really that many trans people, y'all. So if we went to like per dollar spent marginalizing, like for each actual individual in the affected population, y'all, trans people will be millionaires if instead of passing all these trans bills and all this lobbying, if you just like gave them that money. Like if we just there's just literally not that many trans people that like the fucking $100,000 they spent per trans people, like, oh my goodness, can you imagine what actual economic growth we could have had? It's crazy. But this is your vision. And this is how they manufactured your consent. They spend a lot of money to get you to put a lot of energy into hating a group that, quite frankly, is not even probably part of your life. You probably don't even see or interact with on a daily basis. Matter of fact, that's why most of y'all keep coming up and saying that dumb shit. I just don't understand or get trans people. You just probably don't know trans people. Start with that. I don't really know any trans people. Oh, okay. Well, part of the reason you don't understand it is because you don't know anybody. So you're not getting actual perspective from the people with the lived experience. But just a question, if you don't know any trans people and you don't understand trans people, why the fuck are you so worried about trans people? Why are you worried about them transitioning all of the kids if you don't even know any fucking kids that have transitioned? Why are you so worried about them ruining girls' sports if you can't name a fucking girls' sports team with an actual trans person on it that does anything other than sit on the bench and be mediocre like the rest of the fucking sixth graders on the goddamn soccer team? You name one. Go find me the trans kid that just got put on the fucking World Cup team in seventh grade, and it's just so unfair to them to be playing against all the other seventh graders. Find that shit first. Can we have a fucking problem before we solve it? But this is y'all fighting a fucking full-fledged war against an enemy you likely have never even seen up close. Congratulations.
Is needed for my argument to hold water. The only thing that is needed is for it to exist. And if I can point to it existing, it is 100% there. And there it is. And these are not small independent creators. These are multimillionaires who are in the exact same groups as everybody else in the Trump administration right now. The propaganda is being created. And the propaganda doesn't have to be made by the state to serve its purpose. Disney made World War II propaganda. It simply needs to exist. Then we get to stage 7. This is your preparation. Perpetrators plan the genocide. They often use euphemisms, such as the Nazi phrase, the final solution, to cloak their intentions. Acts of genocide are disguised as self-defense, as if there is an ongoing armed conflict. From the White House itself, defending women from gender ideology, restoring the biological truth to our government.
Y'all, check it out. We did a whole stream about these executive orders. Yeah, back when I was getting ready for today's stream, I was like, oh, I got the trans flag in my recent thumbnails. I was like, what was that from? I was like, oh yeah, it was the stream about these executive orders. But you see it right there, y'all. Defending women from the extremism and defending the biological truth of gender. It's just, it's insanity, y'all. It's insanity. It's literally creationist legislation, y'all. It's literally, they assert their worldview. They then assert that all science and, academia confers with that, agrees with them. It hurts me, y'all. It hurts me because it's literally the thing I studied, which I'm gonna go ahead and tell y'all some shit that somehow I'm not supposed to say, even though it feels like the most basic fucking thing to fucking say. So here goes fucking nothing. I actually think science and academia are supposed to be inherently liberalizing forces. It's supposed to be inherently liberalizing traditions. When you look at why we establish a university, it is like literally to like free people. It's like, yeah, we needed to like train people. We need to like give them skills so they can like have economic autonomy and then use that to participate in society. And if we don't educate the people, power, money, influence, all of that will remain in the hands of the privileged elite, right? Because they, first off, they start with fucking everything. And then on top of that, they can afford education, like, right? So that is why we even like established the fucking state university systems. And then even like private, like liberal arts colleges, they were like the same thing. Like we got to create an educated citizen. So let's like create other places, like more universities where we could teach people how to teach, and we could focus on, like a liberal arts education. And the whole point of that was liberal arts. It was supposed to make you a better and more informed fucking citizen. And so then what could be more important than biology? Study life. Understand how the real ultimate contract that we all have. We were all born into this fucking world. As far as we know, the natural world is the only one we can observe and make a systematic inquiry of, okay? And we all headed towards that grave. And we're going to use what we can learn together to try to fucking help us all out. We're gonna discover some medicines. We're going to discover some cures and some treatments so we can help people live longer with certain things and maybe even defeat certain things so people don't die or have their lives altered by those things. We're going to give people skills so they can go out and they can create an economy, they can create jobs. People don't think about this shit, but that is the fucking point of all of it. That is the fucking point of all of it. We are wasting our time teaching and researching if we are not leveraging those things to improve people's fucking lives. So when science is being used to marginalize people, especially the people who are numerically the least of these, in terms of resources and power and economic power and all of that, they're even more so the least of these. And now we're going to use science to marginalize them rather than to solve problems on their behalf. That is stop. I don't give a fuck about your genome sequencing. I don't give a shit about this experiment over here. Like, yes, all those things are wonderful. They're beautiful and they're important. But yo, this is something we have to stop and address. And I feel like most people in my field, most biologists, most scientists won't talk about it, won't look at it, and don't seem to care.
Executive order. It's always framed as self-defense. It's always framed with a euphemism. We're just defending women. And we're not trying to eliminate trans people. We're defending them from gender ideology. And if we're going to go ahead and bring up the grandpappy of most genocidal arguments, I can do that too. We're not against Jews. We're against national Jewry. Anybody who's done even a small bit of studying of Hitler's regime should have had a red flag pop up in their brain the minute I said those words.
Thanks,
because they remember those
words
being used when they were studying the genocide that happened in Germany. Now, your next stage is persecution. Victims being identified by their ethnicity or religion. Death lists are drawn up. People are sometimes segregated into ghettos, deported or starved, and property is often expropriated. Now, this one, you may think we're not at. However, as of right now, when people try to get their names changed for passports, their names get put on lists. As of right now. Lists of trans people are, in fact, being drawn up. And again, I'm going to use this argument once more. There is no word for 687 bills being proposed against you as an individual other than persecution. There is no word to describe this other than that. An attempt to identify these would-be victims. And while the definitions of genocide try to argue that this is only for ethnicity or religion, I would argue that as long as you have a targeted group and there is an attempt, it is 100% that.
And again, like, it's funny that the people who are doing this are the first to claim persecution. We hear about Christian persecution every day. Matter of fact, Donald Trump established an office of faith just to make sure people aren't persecuting Christians. I'd like to see the bills. I'd like to see the bills banning Christianity. I'd like to see the bills checking Christians' documentation. I'd like to see the bills preventing them from using their restrooms. I'd like to see the bills preventing them from playing sports. I'd like to see the bills preventing them from running for office. I'd like to see the bills that accuse them of fraud for lying to the rest of us.
So,
yeah, the stupid war on Christmas.
Where does that leave us?
Exactly.
Because
yeah, PC, the list.
The scary part
the list
is
is
me
being
getting
made.
a BattleNet notification for some reason, of all things. The scary part is supposed to be extermination. This is the part.
Hang on, but real quick. Let's take a little. We're at a little good midstream break, so let's just take a little quick inventory, y'all. Just a little smidgen of an update. Just a little thought experiment. Let me get on screen. Just a little thought experiment. A little thought experiment, y'all. Whew. We know this war against trans people is being motivated by the fact that they just don't fit with these people's conception of who we're supposed to be and how we are to live. And once they have their way, once when they get their thousands of bills through and all this stuff happens, what do you think they're going to do next? I hope all the Christians, I hope y'all are really comfortable with each other. And I hope you mean what you say when you say you just have minor disagreements amongst brethren, because when you're done grabbing power, what happens next? All of a sudden y'all gonna iron out these differences amongst brethren, or are you gonna start warring amongst yourselves? Who really gonna call a day at the end of the day? Is it gonna be the right wing Catholics, the right wing evangelicals? Is it gonna be the Baptists? Who's in charge? And what does that look like for people who practice the wrong Christianity? What does it look like for people who have different faiths? And what does it look like for those of you who don't have any faith at all? If you look at what they're doing and they justify it by saying, these people don't confirm, with my vision of the world my God wants us to have, what do you think they will do to people who actually become godless? Do you think the actual enemies of God won't be put on the list? You think they won't start passing legislation against your full participation in society? Come on, y'all. Somebody is always next.
This is the part I argued we weren't at the last time that I did this video. Stage 9 is extermination. The hate group murders their identified victims in a deliberate and systematic campaign of violence. Now, what did I say when I began this video? What did I argue in the beginning of this video? If you wanted to enact a genocide in the modern day with all of the surveillance we have, all of the documentation, all the news organizations, all of the independent media, everything, how would you do that? Very simple. You would make it invisible. We go back to the Texas bill once more. If we make it a jailable offense to simply be yourself, what's the quietest way you can kill someone? Very simply. No, not even the death penalty, undead rodent. No. Very simply put, You let the victims eliminate themselves. It's a beautiful solution, is it not? You didn't do it. They did it. There was something in their house that needed sorting out, not
Anti-transgender laws cause up to 72% increase in suicide attempts among transgender and non-binary youth, study shows. Tell me again what you're doing to protect the kids. And again, I don't see how this is not the point. If I told you you can't play sports, you're a gross, and you make us feel threatened just by deciding that, yeah, when you go to a shopping mall or you spend fucking 2.5 hours to watch the latest fucking cash grab, unoriginal Hollywood respin, and whoops, you've got to take a piss. Now there's a whole fucking incident at the goddamn mall. Okay, you get pulled into a special line and held under examination every time you travel because the only documentation you're allowed to use has a fucking different name and looks like a different person than the person's fucking standing in front of me. I've made it really hard for you to go to school, really hard for you to get a job. Oh, by the way, we got rid of all the fucking DEI programs, so nobody just nobody even bothers to fucking consider that, I don't know, you might need a fucking job with some meaningful career prospects. And oh wait, psych, when you thought all this was causing trauma and you were going to go get some help, I just decided, nah, you don't really need healthcare, do you? I mean, you're committing fraud, not suffering from a mental health episode. You clearly, this isn't about your mental health. This is about you committing crime. Are we going to sit here and pretend now that we're surprised that this causes some people to say, you know, I don't really feel like my life is valued. Maybe that means I'm not living a valuable life. If you want to know the truth, I would say it is impossible, or at least I will say I find it exceedingly difficult to have trans people in your life right now in any meaningful way and not be absolutely concerned on an almost daily basis that something will drive them to harm themselves. Because quite frankly, I can't blame them for that thought. I can't blame them for that. You were already dealing with an incredibly difficult fucking life. I thought about a trans child coming out to their friends or coming out to their parents and realizing that even though they're a young person, even though that they're just in the beginning of this process, just in the beginning of this journey, they are already dealing with the hardest thing that they have ever had to deal with. And they are so brave and courageous, and they are doing the most difficult thing someone their age can even imagine doing. And then you realize that people in power are waging a war against them simply for existing, and by all means intend to exclude them from full participation in society. How can you not be concerned about their mental health? And so if you are contributing to this, if you have bought into this, if you have been going along with this, stop. I've got something even more controversial to say, but I'll get there.
Yours?
Let's go.
There was something that
No, you know what? I'm gonna just say now, so I don't forget. And this might sound weird to a lot of people. You don't owe us an explanation. Yeah, if you're one of these people that has been on this kick and you've been actively contributing to this and you continue to contribute to this, yeah, we're gonna have to deal with you. You're gonna have to be called to the floor. It's time. It's time for the rest of us to roll up our sleeves and do some work. And if you're in the way, then you become the work. But when you get out of the way, when you stop, you don't owe us an explanation. And I say that because we don't have time anymore. We don't have time for the debates. We don't have time for the conversation. If you don't understand it, sure, you got a lot of homework to do. But right now, you need to stop. And as soon as you stop, it's over. We're on the bigger fish. We're trying to solve the problem. As soon as you say, hey, I was going down the wrong path, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm bowing up out of the transphobia. Cool, you're done. You're good. You could now just come along and help out. Just start do what the rest of us do. Get in line and push. That's all the rest of us is doing. We're all getting in line and we're pushing the people in front of us to go further. That's all we're trying to do. But right now, I think there's too much guilt. There's too much like, well, let's get into it. I want to understand why you're coming from where you were coming from and why you were. We could review the game tape later. Right now, we're in the middle of the goddamn second half. The game is on the line. Let's go. And so I mean that, and I know that a lot of us want to see heads roll and we want to see accountability, but I just don't think we have time for that shit right now. We just need it to stop.
Needed to solve, not you. How do you exterminate a group in 2025?
We all right, crap. We hanging in there.
In the most effective but invisible way possible?
We here together.
You cause a 72% increase in their suicide rates. And how do you do that? By putting forth every single ounce of legislation you possibly can to make them want to. Demonize them to their parents, demonize them to their friends, demonize them to their siblings, demonize them to their coworkers, demonize them to their managers, demonize them to their boss.
Slug, thanks for the super chat. Thanks for being a relentless ally. We need more people like you in the world. Thank you, bro. I appreciate y'all, man. Honestly, we need more people like y'all, and I appreciate that. Term ally is always weird. I consider myself a friend. I'm just trying to help my friends, and they're the same people that I think would do the same for me. And yeah, so I really appreciate that. But yeah, we're just out here trying to get by, and yeah, I'm just trying to show some love to people who would be speaking up on my behalf if it were, my neck on the line. Which other times it is, and I always appreciate them. So yeah, thanks for that, Slug. Appreciate it.
Demonize them to the politicians and demonize them to the constituents that vote for those politicians. Researchers at the Trevor Project have published a study in the peer-reviewed journal Nature, Human Behavior that found that anti-transgender state-level laws has had a significant and causal impact on suicide risk among transgender and non-binary young people across the United States. Now, just to give you an idea of the number difference here, from 2018 to 2022, 48 anti-transgender laws were enacted in the United States across 19 different state governments. 48 across 19 states. We are now looking at 687 across 49 states.
Yeah, it's a crazy generous super chat, Slug. Thank you again.
Months into the year, and 17 of them have passed. That means that by the end of this year, if these statistics hold true, 100 bills will pass. Double the amount of bills in 1 year against one group of people that make up 1% of the population. An 800% increase in the frequency of these bills passing than in the last time this was studied across a 4-year margin. This groundbreaking study offers robust and indisputable evidence to support what we've already known. The recent wave of anti-transgender laws in the U.S. is quite literally risking the lives of young people across the country. From a scientific perspective, studying the phenomenon of how these policies impact LGBTQ+ young people's mental health is relatively new. In our analysis of data collected from more than 61,000 transgender and non-binary youth across 5 years, this study critically confirms, for the first time, a causal relationship between anti-transgender laws and heightened suicide risk among transgender and non-binary people. But were it just me saying this? Were it just me saying this, that would not be enough. Not in a billion years. Not at all. I am too small of a channel. And of course, this is where I want to say, hey, maybe subscribe, maybe support what I'm doing, maybe go send this video to a friend if you haven't been able to convince them that this is what's happening. I say all those things not just because I want my argument heard, but because it helps me do the thing that I need to do to survive.
All right, so we're going to talk basically about algorithmic solidarity. I don't even know what that means. I just made that shit up, y'all. You know, it's like I said, it's actually like this weird thing. It gets frustrating to have a small channel, in the sense of actually, I mean, I would say my relationship with my audience is really good. Like I always feel, you know, heard in the community, which is awesome. But yeah, you do get this feeling sometimes like you're on something or you'll talk about something forever, and then a bigger channel will say it or do it or get into it, and now all of a sudden it's got legs. And it's like a weird feeling because you're like, God damn it, just like give me a shot, and you know, I can contribute. But it does actually like really help. And so, you know, it's important. You guys don't realize it's so important that you do all the algorithm, the like, the share, the da-da-da-da. But it's also like, I don't know, it's big of content creators who do this for a living and take on unpopular opinions or risky things as part of their content because they really care and they want to do the right thing. And unfortunately, there's like not enough people who do that. And so like part of the reason I wanted to cover this, even though you know, it's for me, someone who has a much bigger channel than I do, I recognize there's still a small channel, and this is still, and we're still relatively unenfranchised. Like, we just don't have the same basis of organization and resources on our side. So it is really important that we like still continue to help each other grow and encourage each other. And then also just, I want to see more people doing this. I feel like a lot of us, we have a really small community, but we have genuinely representation of LGBTQ people, particularly trans people, and they're very meaningful participants in our community. Like, everybody knows them. But it feels like only them themselves and like the smaller channels that are closely allied to them, like their friends, really get into this stuff. And then there's like this whole mass of our community where it's like, okay, maybe you're not the biggest channel in the world, maybe you're not YouTube famous, but you're far bigger than any of us are. You know, like I have a little bit more than like 1,000 subscribers, right? And so if you're anywhere between, you know, a couple hundred subscribers to like, you know, 5,000 or something like that, we're still talking super small, super tiny. But in that space, there's very few people in the community that talk about these things. And then when you get to that next level where people have, you know, 5,000 to 10,000 subs, it's like almost nobody talks about this. It's like literally like there's Takis, you know, there's the transpositions, like they're new, they're just growing. And then it's like nothing till you then get to like another level of like left-wing content creators. Like where's this channel at? Like they've got 62,000 subscribers. So you're in that 20,000, 50,000 plus level where now you're like, you're making content more broadly. Like you're not even necessarily, your content isn't necessarily reflective of like a small community that you're actually in. I hope this is making sense to y'all. Like what I'm saying is like, it's crazy because most of us, even in this space, even in these communities where we know trans people are part of our community and we know and love trans people, we're not talking about this. We're not contributing to this. And it's like we're leaving it up to the trans content creators themselves, who are usually very, very, very small and just growing their own little individual presence. And then way up until people start dealing with counter apologetics at a certain level or have a certain degree of influence in like the political or social issue space, then they start talking about it. What about the rest of us? Like, that's crazy.
But were it just me, this would just be my crackpot theory, and that would be that. But if there was a red flag alert for the anti-trans agenda of the Trump administration, specifically from the Lincoln Institute, who put that red flag alert up because, well, that means that we have hit a stage of genocide, maybe that would add a few bits of weight to my words. The Lemkin Institute for Genocide Prevention and Human Security condemns the anti-trans agenda of the second Trump administration and warns Americans of the recent spate of executive orders, which are in line with a genocidal process against the transgender community that has been emerging in the United States for over a decade. They are meant to pave the way for greater state repression against all individuals and other groups in the future. It is important to consistently and loudly reject this administration's efforts to isolate any people or groups due to their identities, to reaffirm the United States' commitment to individual rights and diversity, and to push back against efforts to normalize state repression and violence. The Lemkins Institute believes that current anti-trans hysteria within the government is meant to serve three purposes within a wider genocidal process. First, the executive orders constitute the paper marginalization and the paper persecution of an identity group that has recently gained rights and greater acceptance in order to lock in evangelical support for the Trump administration.
Wow.
Second, the executive orders create a fictitious cosmic enemy that will justify the radicalization of the government in general, leading to ever more power for the executive branch. And third, the executive orders over time aim to normalize the destruction of identity groups by desensitizing the public to state-sponsored persecution of people based solely on their identities. Taken together, the Trump admin's executive orders related to trans people would effectively destroy, if fully implemented, trans people as a group. In whole, to summarize the text of the Genocide Convention, the orders begin the process of removing a trans presence from collective life and preventing trans people from existing as themselves. We go back to the Texas bill once more.
All right, hang on. Before we do that, we remember 3119. Okay. This is where the appeal to me across the aisle comes in. You know, I made a point a few streams ago that has stuck with me since. It's part of my changing perspective, I guess you could say. Which is, I realized that if let's think about economic issues. It's probably not a surprise. I don't think capitalism is the bee's knees, and we could do better. And that a society based on the sort of biblical values I was raised with, feeding the poor, feeding the hungry, you know, giving shelter and all of this to the poor, visiting the lost, healing the sick, all that good stuff. If we could really get the force of Christian identity behind that, this would be an incredibly socialistic society, and there'd almost be nothing we could do about it. Because that's how powerful they are as, you know, their influence on elections. Alternatively, if they just bowed out of electoral life altogether and just said, hey, we're gonna keep our eye on the prize. The prize is not this life, but the next. So we'll leave, you know, civil matters to those who are more concerned with life here on earth. Again, we could move society in such a progressive socialistic direction, there'd almost be nothing to stop us. And this is an example of that. And so this is the part I want to focus on for those. The Lemkin Institute believes that the current anti-trans hysteria within the government is meant to serve three purposes within a wider genocidal process. First, the executive orders constitute the paper marginalization and paper persecution of an identity group that has recently gained rights and greater acceptance in order to lock in evangelical support for the Trump administration. What is this telling us, y'all? It is fact. Both in terms of we all watched it, saw it, lived through it, and experienced it ourselves. But now we've gone ahead and done ourselves the favor of researching it and crunching the numbers and really taking a hard look at the data. And now we've made our empirical analysis as well. This was done to lock in evangelical support. Evangelicals, this was done for you. This was done for you. They sold you the hate they believed they could leverage based on what was in your heart so that they could use you to keep them in power. That's why you own this. It's not just that this was happening and you look the other way, that'd be bad enough. It's not just that this happened and it just so happens you guys have had a little bit of a hard time recognizing it because, you know, it's they tied it up to your religious messaging. No, they did this to win your support, and it worked. That's what you got to sit with. And now we have the genocide that was sold to you, that you bought us. And that hurts. That hurts. But that's the reality. And this is what I mean where we say we need you to step up. We need you to step up. It's just time to stop. Second, the executive orders created a fictitious cosmic enemy. Anybody else in the room know what it's like to be the cosmic enemy of these people? I mean, it's crazy. And then of course, finally, and third, over time, aims to normalize the destruction of identity groups by desensitizing the public to state-sponsored persecution of people based solely on their identities. And you've got your war on the woke, your anti-DEI to go right along with it. And if you haven't picked up what I'm laying down, if you happen to be in a different religious group or the wrong sect of Christianity, or God forbid you're somebody that doesn't identify as religious at all, what do you think this means for your rights? If we can desensitize people to a genocide against trans people based on appealing to evangelicals, what do you think will happen when we start talking about what we should do to keep the godless under control?
Aim to normalize the destruction of identity groups by desensitizing the public to state-sponsored persecution of people based solely on their identities. Taken together, the Trump admin's executive orders related to trans people would effectively destroy, if fully implemented, trans people as a group. In whole, to summarize the text of the Genocide Convention, the orders begin the process of removing a trans presence from collective life.
Let's catch up to where we were.
Of the Native American boarding schools, where into invisibility and isolation. This attack on trans identity is reminiscent in the United States context of the Native American boarding schools, where the goal was to kill the Indian to save the man. Not only would the effort deprive trans Americans of gender-affirming health care and constitute a form of torture and medical malpractice with terrible mental health repercussions, but also such measures are a common phase in genocidal processes and are generally used to lead to greater persecution.
Crazy, y'all. Shout out to the boy, Michael Beverly. I think me and Michael got a video coming out. Me and Michael spent a long time together. Michael might still be editing that one, but always happy to see you, Mike. And yeah, we try to keep making videos on a somewhat regular basis, and I actually really appreciate Michael for doing that, because it helps me grow as he grows. So thank you, Michael.
Trump's language denying the reality of trans identity and criminalizing its expression is similar to Russian President Putin's language regarding Ukrainian identity and Israel's language regarding Palestinian identity. These three states each deny the identity of clearly visible, historically continuous groups. Identity denial is a genocidal tactic aimed at vanquishing what is believed to be an evil, existential, and inherently criminal foe, and it always results in mass atrocity if it is not nipped in the bud. While the latter two cases of Russia and Israel involved imperialist land claims, in the case of the Trump admin anti-trans policies, the goal is rather to achieve victory over an internal enemy, the perceived virus of, quote, woke ideology, of which United States conservatives believe trans people are the primary carriers. Many conservatives are convinced that there is an ideology called transgenderism that is supporting a global totalitarian project that aims to destroy family bonds and render humanity enslaved to a global government and economic exploitation. And that thinking is now in power in the White House. And if you don't,
and for a lot of people, this is where they got y'all. This is where they got you. They got you with the hysteria. They got you with buying into the fact that woke was a problem. And to be honest, and let's be real, they used your prejudice. They used your tendency to really believe that the rest of us don't really deserve our seat at the table. It was all too easy to convince you. It's not really that there's too much patriarchy and it's long overdue that, you know, women get an equal bite of the apple. No. We were just trying to do too much diversity, too much DEI. It's not that there's institutionalized racism and xenophobia and all of these things. No. We've just gotten too woke. They used your sexism, your racism, your fear of other Christians, your fear of your fear of Islam. They used all this to get you on board, making you believe that the only way you could hold on to power and privilege is to exclude those other people. And then they went straight to your creationist attitude, straight to your belief of conservative values and the family and all of this stuff. And they got you to do their culture war bidding for them. And you literally put a criminal in the White House who's now effectively selling off our government and shutting down services. You got played. But now everyone is suffering as a result. Everyone is suffering as a result.
I don't think that thinking is pervasive in propagandic groups. Again, Michael Knowles from the Daily Wire specifically stated that we need to engage in the elimination or the eradication of transgenderism, and then tried to say that this is not calling for the elimination of transgender people. But there's no way that you could do that. You cannot eliminate Christianity without eventually trying to get rid of all of the Christians. It is simply not possible. You can't get rid of atheism without, at some point, having to kill the atheists who don't convert. Were it just me arguing that this is a thing that the administration is doing, then yeah, you could write me off.
All right, another super chat. Thank you so much, Robin Webster. They attack so many, we can't fight back. That is, you know, that's part of what we're seeing right now too. We're seeing just flood the zone, and you know, I think that, to be honest, I think that this is actually why this has been so effective. First off, they use this to really get people stoked up about this. People have a lot of energy with regard to the trans issue. But then in reality, they flooded the zone with so many other things. And now people who unfortunately have a severe empathy gap when it comes to trans people. They just for some reason see them as so different than everybody else that somehow they just don't have the same level of compassion for them that they have for others. Well, they don't know a lot of trans people. And like they say, trans people are, 1% of the population maybe on a good day. So now it's all too easy to say everything else is so much more important. Look at the attack on the Department of Education. Look at what they're trying to do to Social Security. They're going to make Canada the 51st state. They're still funding a genocide in Gaza. The price of eggs is crazy. They just got rid of all the DEI, so all your black, brown, and female friends just became DEI hires. You know, like there's so much going on that, quite frankly, a society that never really had the energy to defend trans people in the first place, even when the people that would marginalize them were not in power, they have even less energy to defend them now, even though their marginalization and the genocide against them has escalated. People now have a whole new slew of problems to be even more concerned with. And so protecting trans people was on the back burner on their best day. Now it's not even in the refrigerator. It's not even in the freezer. And I damn sure ain't about to get my ass out this house and go to the grocery store just to get it. Very twisted analogy there, but y'all get what I'm saying. It's just people have made it something that they don't even have to be concerned about anymore, which is exactly what they wanted. Now they can go about eliminating trans people. And, you know, if you decide you really want to fight the power, you'll decide you're more concerned about the price of eggs. They're planning on that too.
Off as the next Alex Jones crackpot.
Love you, Robin. Thank you so much.
And I wouldn't even fault you for it. But it's not just me. It's globally respected organizations who make it their job to research this. I gathered all of my examples for this on my own, independently. But people who are not working autodidactically as a single individual, who have academic backing far and above what I have, experts in their field, are saying the same thing. It's not just me saying it. There are 10 steps to genocide, and there is one more step that you, yes, you, have probably actively engaged in. This step can only happen after step 9 has already happened. I believe we are at step 9. But we are at step 9 in a way that most people would not consider. People can argue that we are at step 9 of genocide for the Gazans because, of course, Israel is actively trying to hunt them down. We can argue that we are at step 9 for the Ukrainians because, obviously, Russia is trying to eliminate them. But my argument for step 9 here is that a smart administration that wants to eliminate people without dealing with global backlash would do so invisibly. They would do so utilizing a method that they are able to wipe their hands clean from. And persecuting people to the point where they kill themselves, or are otherwise fully eliminated from society because they are too afraid to come out into that society, that is most certainly enough for me to support a stage 9 hypothesis. But what is stage 10?
I've been watching Ozark, and it's like I'm way late to the dance. I tried to watch it before when it was popular, and I just never finished it. So now I'm like kind of going back through it, and there's an interesting story where you know, they blackmail the hell out of a politician, and he takes his own life, and rather than it exposing the corruption and everything that's happening, they realize, oh, you know, this person has a history of depression, right? And so, you know, the story goes from there. I guess I'll try not to spoil it. I'm terrible at that anyway. But this feels so much like what's going on now. You have to really have an empathy gap. You have to have something, and this is the challenge for all these people. You gotta do some serious self-reflection and figure out, how did I get this vulnerability? How did I get to this point where I was so willing to buy into what I was being told about people I don't even interact with, that I was willing to sit idly by when they told me, we want to eliminate these people. We're taking these people's rights. And then I've seen all these bills being proposed. I've seen all these ads, all of this stuff, and you're sitting idly by. And now you hear about negative outcomes happening to these people, and it's like a built-in excuse. They did it to themselves. They were, they had problems, and it's crazy. It's crazy. I just need people to understand, they did a number on you. They did a number on you, and now we're all paying for it.
10.
Oh my goodness.
Well, stage 10 is denial. The perpetrators, or later generations, deny the existence of any crime. Evidence gets destroyed, witnesses get intimidated. There's also been an increase of Holocaust denial in recent years. This goes back to Nick Fuentes' cookie problem. If you've ever heard that, I can summarize it for you, though. We have 5 years to bake 6 million cookies, and we only have a handful of cookie factories. And even if we were cooking multiple cookies in every oven all the time, I can't possibly think of a way that we would be able to cook 6 million cookies in such a short amount of time. It just doesn't seem statistically feasible. Now, of course, you replace cookies with Jewish people, and the factories with the camps, and the ovens with the various ways that, including ovens, that Jewish people were killed, and you see where the cookie question was going. It is a form of denialism. Stage 10 happens all the way throughout the genocide while the steps are being taken. Our government is bandying around each of these steps for funsies. And then, of course, people like Michael Knowles are denying that any of that's even happening in the first place. Again, I can provide you, and have in this video, a concrete example for every single one of my claims. If your goal in the comment section is to tell me I'm wrong, then you better have a damn good reason. The most you might be able to say is, I sound arrogant. And you're right. I do sound arrogant. I sound arrogant because I'm right. And I know I'm right. So what do we do? That's the fun part, right? What do we do about all this? Well, when there's not a violent regime coming down on you yet, when there's not a violent regime coming down on you, you are very limited in the ways that you can fight back. In fact, I would argue that we are incredibly limited in the ways that we can fight back. But there are a few ways that we can fight back. Here's the basic one. Here's the basic one.
Wow, PC. Dedicate cookie making to the average person is what they're doing. Yeah. 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 Yep. And when I tell you things, like, a lot of the defense of this I'm hearing is, He made them male and female. He created them male and female. God don't make mistakes. These people are confused. I'm not actually talking about things that I hear from right-wingers. I'm not exactly right-wingers' favorite person to talk to, if you couldn't tell. It's what I hear from liberals. It's what I hear from liberals. It's what I hear from liberal Christians. This is the problem. That's the manufactured consent. That's the same thing as the Christians who are telling us they're not anti-LGBTQ, and it's really unfortunate that the other ones have been so opposed to gay marriage and all that. But when you push them, when you really question them, turns out they actually do think there's something wrong with being gay. Turns out they do actually think it's a sin, and they do think that that's what's in the Bible, and they struggle with it, and they wrestle with it. Of course, they're wrestling with it with you, not wrestling with it with the people they disagree with. And that's where I and others like me end up saying, you're doing PR for the bad guys. Because you're not doing church reform. I always get the idea the church is going to be reformed, and then it's going to be this great, grand, liberalizing institution any day now. Any day now. That's another part of this whole thing, is denying its historical precedent. It is not seeing the same way, the same dehumanization of others, the same couching it in the existential fears of particularly powerful religious groups. That same cosmic appeal to them, that there's a cosmic enemy and you're engaged in a transcendental war and battle, has been used throughout history to elongate, exacerbate, and then fight to maintain the institution of slavery, to justify and legitimize genocide and dispossession of Native Americans, the internment of the Japanese, the oppression and continued suppression of women's rights, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, homophobia, the war on drugs. The list goes on. This is the same story that plays out over and over and over and over again. So perhaps the greatest insult to all of us is pretending like this is an accident or just a historical slip up, rather than seeing that this is fundamentally who these people are, because it's who they've always been. And yes, I wish they were better people too, so none of us ever had to talk about this. But how the fuck are we supposed to solve the world's problems if we're not even honestly allowed to talk about why they exist in the first place?
There is r/50501. You can go here. There are people who are constantly posting places that they are wanting to organize, get together, get connected, and protest. You can actually do this over on Mobilize as well, right over here. Now, I'm going to let you know that my opinion on protests is very simple. They do not change dick all. Protests are a way to organize people together so that they together can have a moment of grieving.
Absolutely. Thanks, Slug. Engage in mutual aid for trans people. If you have the means, this will make a tangible difference in people's lives right now, make their lives a tiny bit easier. I literally couldn't agree more. I think that's the most important thing most of us can do on a day-to-day basis.
A moment of shared identity. In this way, I would argue that protest is a step one. You go to a protest, you meet people, and then you use that as a springboard to plan other action afterwards. Obviously, you can participate in multiple protests. Feels good. There's nothing wrong with that. But once more, a protest doesn't do anything. It puts people together, and it lets a message get out there if the media is paying attention to you. And sometimes getting the media to pay attention to you requires things like burning down a Wendy's, which moves it from a protest to a riot.
All right, here's where I'm going to start getting a little critical, y'all. I think protesting is an important first step. And let me get on camera for this. I think we need to organize a protest within our communities. There is something so valuable to the other side. It is literally their lifeline. See, here's the truth I've learned about people who lead lives with no basis in reality. They're never satisfied to play by themselves. Because when they're off playing by themselves, it almost seems like they're being left alone to live their lives out, be in their own little special community, be in their own little special world, and have at it, and you know, we let them have their peace and do what they want to do, and then like people are just living their lives, and they don't care. They don't seem to need what they have. So they need our attention. That's what they want. They need our engagement because they believe that that's how they spread what they're about. And I think that for lots of reasons, demographics, history of the community, whatever, this whole skeptic, critical thinking space has actually been incredibly focused on the other side. We have made them the stars of the show, sometimes the purpose of our content, and in some cases, our personal mission. We've been all about debating them, debunking them, having conversations with them. And I would argue that in many ways we've been played along. And in some sense, we've played ourselves. What I've seen a lot of, and I've been seeing this for years in this community, is that most people, even on our side, are willing to ignore the really bad behavior if they can just get some meaningful engagement out of it. So like, even when you're dealing with all of these apologists, most people that I know that are in some kind of marginalized group know that you're really dealing with the enemy in a way. And I'm not saying this to be like, oh, you know, they're in the other political party or they believe differently than you do. No. I'm talking about like straight up, bro. Like, you know, there are people that want to take things from you, take your rights, stop you from having things. You know, there's really a struggle. When certain marginalized groups talk about the struggle, we ain't play. We talking about a real struggle. And it's a struggle that's caused by the way all of our lives have to interface with power, and the fact that people in power have always been able to marginalize us and do in fact do so. And so when you're talking to certain people, it's like, I know a lot of times if you're a woman, it's you feel the fact that you're talking this guy, and you might say, oh, he's, you know, I'm talking, there's an atheist and a Christian, and we're talking about the, I don't know, argument for morality or the causal contingency of the metaphysical, right? Like all these dumbass philosophy bro conversations we're having, right? And at some point, like a lot of times, if you're a woman and you're watching this conversation, you realize that a lot of times the you know, the person on one side is like they're like a defending the patriarchy type. Like they will literally defend the patriarchy. Like that's their whole deal. And it's like the other person who's engaged in the conversation, who usually ostensibly like sees themselves as like a more progressive person or whatever, it's either like they don't see that the person is that way, or they've refused to accept that the person is that way, or they're in outright denial about it, or they just don't care because it's somehow more important if I can wrestle them down, if I can win this pissing contest, if I can show them I'm smarter than them and that their arguments are bunk, then what? I don't know. Are you like fighting the good fight? But it doesn't seem like you're fighting the good fight because you don't even mention the fight. So it doesn't seem like you're really like taking up and fighting for a cause. It just feels like you're trying to outsmart a person nobody really thought was right to begin with. And so then it's like you become a tool in their MO. Their MO is to be able to turn to their audience and say, look at me, I'm debating the other side. Look at me, I'm having conversations with atheists. I'm having conversations with liberals. I'm having conversations with the progressives and the woke and the da-da-da-da-da. But when you actually go to the conversation, nothing about the conversation has anything to do with being progressive or woke or actually jumping into any of those issues. It's like, no, y'all sat up there and debated the cosmological constants. So that's what I wanted to use, that to get very serious about the setup for this, y'all. We need to start protesting these motherfuckers. No, I think you're a fucking bigot. I don't have anything to say to you about fucking creationism versus evolution. Well, I'm a creationist and I don't think you can adequately defend the evidence. I don't give a fuck. Congratulations. I have no interest in talking to people that cannot unequivocally say trans rights are human rights, and we're gonna do what we need to do to make sure trans people aren't marginalized. Because guess what? As soon as you say that to me, guess what happens as soon as you say that to me? All of a sudden, we don't even have anything to debate anymore. Nor do we have time to debate it. Because it's like, yeah, I completely agree. What the fuck we gonna do? Okay, I got this trans person. All right, I'm gonna check in on them. Yeah, all right, so have you heard from so-and-so? Yeah, we looking da-da-da-da-da. Oh, did you hear somebody made this anti-trans shit the other day? They got some of my friends upset. Okay, yeah, we gonna respond to that. Da-da-da-da. Okay, then what we gonna do? Then we gonna call our legislators. Okay, we gonna let them know we don't support these bills. You see what I'm saying? As soon as you show for real, oh my God. Oh, I keep getting things. Why are sounds playing? Hang on a sec, y'all. Where is that coming from? My bad. All right, I fixed that. So it's crazy. Like as soon as we get on the same page, it's like we don't even have time for that. But to be real, y'all, is what I see is the opposite. I see people who feel like going from, you know, not not engaging with other content creators or engaging only with small content creators. It's like we're like moving up the ladder. And I've done some of it myself. Like, I'm not proud of everything I've done since I've been on YouTube. Definitely been some times I went left when I should have gone right. But also, y'all know, when I do engage with people, I try to engage with them differently, and I try to go there, you know, even if it's about something else. It's about, I'll be letting you know, look, I ain't gonna sit down with a person who's engaged in X, Y, and Z, and then you're gonna have an hour of my time and we're not gonna get into it. Okay, you want me to talk about this over here? Okay, we can do that. But then I'm gonna be like, all right, so what are you really about? Because I see you doing this, and this, and that's what we really need to talk about. But I don't see that. I don't see that. What I see instead is like, oh my God, Cliff Connectly, what a great, oh my goodness, that'll be so great. Oh, look, I got to interact with Cliff and Stuart, and look how many views I got, and da-da-da-da-da. And then when you talk to them, you're like, let's debate scripture and philosophy, and there's no nothing. Like, there's no nothing. And so honestly, like, I want people to protest. I would love to see more content creators like and not be quiet about it. Like making a video, like, I'm no longer gonna engage with this person, because I saw what they really had to say. I'm gonna tell y'all what a lot of us do. We do the opposite. We'll make a video with somebody, we'll have a conversation with somebody, having barely even listened to them or heard what they talk about, and then you'll bring them on your channel in front of your audience, and before they go, they get into all the shit themselves. In other words, most of us, when we go to engage with the other side, especially given what they support, what they're about, we already have red flags going off in our head. And so we peeping them up first. Let me figure out who they are first, because we already know so many of them have problematic views. So many of them are bigoted. So many of them, if you go look at who they are, they're going to show you that. Apparently, y'all didn't even do your homework, because you had these people on to talk about whatever. And then before they go, they let you know, oh, yeah, I hate all this trans stuff and the world's gone to hell in a handbasket. And I thought you were a decent atheist. I thought I could talk to you, but clearly you think men can be women, and and now they got you. Now they just got your platform. They got your channel. You done gave them all this credence. You done talked about how much you love them, how much y'all are friends, how much you might think differently about stuff, but they'd be one of your favorite people to go get a beer with. And then boom, now they done shown their ass on your damn channel, and you just gave them an endorsement to your whole audience. And now you got their little sycophants coming in and yelling at your friends and making slurs in your comments, and you got a whole infestation of these people in your goddamn community now. What the fuck are we doing, y'all? And a lot of these people, like, you could have just asked one of your mods, you could have just asked the people in the community. They would tell you so-and-so's a fucking asshole. Yeah, so-and-so's a fucking bigot. I don't know how you don't know this, but it's like pretty obvious. Have you watched them more than twice? Like, what you caught them on the off day? You caught them on the one time they made a 3-hour video and didn't talk about trans people? Well, congratulations. Did you watch any of the other shit? Because this is who these people are. Right? These are the Christo-fascists. These are the religious apologists. These are the Trump supporters. And so how long are we just going to put all that to the side and ignore it so we could continue to talk about their beliefs? When clearly they have no interest in addressing their beliefs, they have no interest in investigating their beliefs, they have no interest in changing their beliefs. And then we keep justifying it. Well, maybe somebody, what audience? Maybe somebody in the audience. So this is what we do now? We kick it with Nazis just in case there happens to be an unsuspecting Nazi watching. So because we might then change that Nazi's mind. Listen, I get it. The idea of a Nazi hearing you out and changing their heart sounds great, but are you being a little bit delusional about your capabilities and the likeliness of this happening? And the number of genuinely movable people who actually watch your content. And so at some point, it just feels like it would just be better to say, I'm sorry, you guys are kind of gross. To be honest, most of you guys literally endorse gross things that I literally can't stomach. Anytime I hear you talk about social issues, you are saying things that I literally just make my skin crawl and I cannot stomach. I cannot stomach your anti-science bullshit. I cannot stomach your Christo-fascism. I cannot stomach your anti-LGBTQ bullshit. I cannot stomach your patriarchy and misogyny. I cannot stomach the excuse making you make for racism. I cannot stomach your defense of slavery. I cannot stomach your willingness to ignore genocide and pretend it isn't something your God commands until you're justifying it because it's what your God commands. Why? Why do I have to keep inviting you to my cookout? And when is it time to say, no, you can't come to the cookout and I am going to tell you why? And until you fucking stop, I am giving you nothing. I'm not interested in watching you. I'm not interested in responding to you unless I am literally criticizing you, tearing you a new asshole, and exposing you for not just how you're wrong, but why you're wrong. And if you don't have that, you might need to consider getting another job. You might need to consider getting about the game. Because the other side is not playing at this. The other side understands that there's a continuum from, and I'm gonna literally draw it out for you guys. There's literally a pipeline from engaging with Christo-fascists like fucking Andrew Wilson and Jim Bob on fucking YouTube, right? Straight into the slightly larger platforms of the Ruslan KDs and the Sean McDowell, all those motherfuckers who then interact with the more legit motherfuckers who slide then even further towards the actual, right wing, Charlie Kirk, Tucker Carlson, Rogan Comedia Spear, right, which leverages straight on through, right, to their fucking sycophantry for billionaires all the way through to the White House, and they understand that. That's why they're constantly leveraging one another and going up and down the hierarchy, right? You always have, for instance, Trump, you know, sitting down with a Nick Fuentes or bigging up Tucker Carlson or some shit like that, because he knows that's how you keep the people on your side. That's how you keep all the content in line. That's how you keep everybody, you know, within the structure that you're trying to create. And you let people know, no. This is down in the streets, at the street level. This is who you pay attention to. We're cool with OAN. We like Fox News. MSNBC, that's bullshit. Don't listen to them. CNN, that's fake. Toss that out. The New York Times can't be trusted. New York Daily Mail, that's the way to go. They see the connection. Our side doesn't. Our side thinks, no, I should just be able to sit down and talk to whoever I want, and we've got to have the conversations, and we can't alienate these people, and we've got to love our enemies, and da-da. Meanwhile, they continue to feed the engine of our oppression, and it just feels like you have nothing to say about it. Which goes right back to where I started with this stream. I'm not trying to be insulting. Some of y'all are just not cut out for it. The issues that we deal with, they're so legitimate, they're so sincere, and they really do dictate the material conditions of people's lives. And if you do not really have to deal with that, you may not understand. You may not understand. If you don't know what it's like to not be a man and have to live in fear of what men do, boy, it's there's gonna be some times when women and other folks that are not men, they get to chatting and they start talking about things and breaking shit down, and it's like, oh my God, I had no fucking idea. Of course you had no idea. This is our lives. This is our everyday lived experience. And if you ain't in one of these bodies, you have no idea what it's like to live in one of these bodies. You know, when you as a black person have had to listen to conservatives whose entire MO has been to oppress your people, and they have done so, and they've always used the same sort of appeal to the Bible and biblical morality and the way God wants it to be and the natural order of things and traditional conservative, all of that bullshit. If that song and dance has not been used to oppress your people for generation or generation after generation after generation after generation, you have no idea what that shit is really like. And so you have to be cut from a different cloth to actually seek out an active understanding of how the world is experienced by people who are not like you. And then you have to have a certain level of tenacity and risk-taking and being willing to, you know, spend your privilege or leverage your platform or leverage your presence to then actually address those issues and do something about it and hold people's feet to the fire and be an active part of the solution. Not everybody has that. So if you really have a hard time, if you're not a person who's really comfortable calling out Nazis, but you insist on dealing with them and having conversations with them, then you're just going to end up the person who likes to chat with them. You're just going to end up being one of their card playing buddies, or the person who they disagree with that they use, that they check in from time to time. And to be honest, y'all, what we see is more of it going the other way, where like when an apostate and a believer get together and start making content, before long now, you get the apostate coming like, oh, I done changed my mind and dedicated my life to Christ. Like, you really open to them influencing you, but not the other way around. Like, it's crazy. But no, seriously, like, we really do need to consider some kind of protest, y'all. Because we keep conceding too much to these people. And I really think we need to let them go. And let them go. And just let them know. Like, I'm sorry, I don't trade in that anymore. All right, I got one more thing for y'all before we get up out of here. It's just like a little bit of moment of zen, a little bit of positivity, a little bit of what the type of effort we need looks like. Hopefully y'all have seen this.
I now recognize the representative from Delaware, Mr. McBride. I now recognize the representative from Delaware, Mr. McBride.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ranking Member Keating, also wonderful.
Mr. Chairman, could you repeat your introduction again, please?
Yes, we have set the standard on the floor of the House, and I'm simply.
What is that standard, Mr. Chairman? Would you repeat what you just said when you introduced a duly elected representative from the United States of America, please?
I will. The representative from Delaware, Mr. McBride.
Mr. Chairman, you are out of order. Mr. Chairman, have you no decency? I've come to know you a little bit, but this is not decent.
We will continue this.
You will not continue it with me unless you introduce a duly elected representative the right way.
This hearing is adjourned.
I love that shit. First off, that is how you shut that shit down. And that is how you spend your privilege. You don't worry about whether they're going to say you're too woke or you falling for the DEI. No. You tell them, sorry, no. We're not going to do this today. We just not going to do this. Notice it wasn't a debate. It wasn't up for conversation. He didn't say, well, why do you think that? Well, let's sit here and talk about the philosophy. Well, let's get into the history of pronoun. No. It was we literally not going to do this today. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do nothing until you address this person right here the way they need to be addressed. And please notice how these bigots are the snowflakiest of the snowflakiest. Oh my God, everything is about free speech and truth, and difficult conversations and reconciliation. Man, somebody put just a little bit of pressure on them. A little bit of heat, and they soft as baby powder, y'all. Imagine adjourning a whole congressional meeting. They're supposed to be so important, and they love this country, and they're doing the hard work of democracy, and nothing could be more important. USA. And imagine you decide that you will not even do the business of the people of the United States of America who have elected you and made you one of the most powerful people in the world. Because you've been told as a grown person to address another grown person in the appropriate way. When the pushback really comes, when they're really told that their bullshit is not going to be tolerated, all of a sudden they rather just take their ball and go home. And they can't even sustain the energy to do their jobs because they've been corrected. I cannot imagine a weaker constitution. And if this is who you voted for, this is the type of people who you voted for, that person has requested to be addressed as she, her. It's very clearly a woman in front of you. Thanks. Could you please act accordingly? My ears. Shut down the entire hearing. I'd rather adjourn the meeting than address this person appropriately. That's what people have signed up for, y'all. All right, look, it's been a long stream. Appreciate y'all for joining me. We right at that 3-hour mark. That's a good indicator for me. It's time to get up out of here. It's obviously a very serious subject. I hope all of us are in reflection, myself included, and thinking about how do we really address this? How do we really respond? And how do we let people know this is not something that we intend to stand for or continue to tolerate, especially not in our own communities, in our own spaces where we do have say, we do have influence. I think it's time we use what little influence we do have to tell people we're not going to play their fucking game anymore if ultimately this is what they're really about. And then make them show us that they are different. Put the onus on them. When I see you making content that addresses this, oh, the bigoted Christians got it wrong, cool. I'll debate you once you make a video telling them how wrong they are. Then you and I can get together. Yeah, when I see that, that'd be great. Yep. When I see you calling out the Christo-fascism and saying this is not how we get down, this is not what our faith is about, this is not how you represent the cross, this is not how you live the life of Jesus, okay, then we could talk. But if you ain't got nothing to say about that, I ain't got nothing to say to you. I love y'all. Support other content creators, especially our trans family members. There's links in the descriptions. Particularly definitely want to plug the transpositions and the co-host, Bree, Steph, Ember. All of them have links in the description. Also, Charlie Cardinay Webb hosts a show with them. So do subscribe to their individual channels and the transpositions. Let us know if there are other content creators we should be aware of. If you like the video, appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff. If you're watching later, thank you so much for making it through, and definitely leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. I really appreciate it. Discord is the best way to stay in touch with us offline, and Gather is the best way to come hang out with us when we're not live. I really appreciate everybody. Thanks to everybody that was in the chat. Thank you again for the very generous super chats. Thanks, Slug and Robin. And yeah, love you guys so much. And thanks to all the mods. And we'll see you next time.